On this episode of AV Week, we talk about video over IP. Which is better, projector or whiteboard? Also talk about security patches and updates. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 295, recorded Friday, April 21st, 2017. Turduckened. AV Week is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like Middle Atlantic. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about all that and probably a little bit more. First and foremost, left-hand side of my brain, a great New Yorker and integrator out of the very city of New York City. His name is George Tucker. How are you, sir?
All right. How was everybody?
Good. Also with us, oh my gosh, we got him. I'm not sure how we got him, work release or something. His name is Tony Zotti. He's an integrator out of Denver. Longtime friend. Haven't seen him in a while. How are you, brother?
I'm good. It's good to be back, boys.
Absolutely, man. Good to see you. Also with us, apparently they're having issues in San Francisco, but Brady has a generator somewhere. His name is Brady Bruce. He is from In Focus. How are you, sir?
I'm doing awesome. And if I disappear, I was either abducted by aliens or the blackout has reoccurred.
Yeah. What's going on there, dude?
I did not do it, but
all right.
The city is in darkness. Yeah.
Good night. That could be another. Yeah. Anyhow.
That's next week's show.
Well, that's next week's show, and I'm from the Midwest, so it's the Bible Belt. See, when you say a city is in darkness, that makes a whole nother.
Oh well,
and it's San Francisco, so that's again a whole nother thing.
That's a permanent condition in San
Francisco. Exactly. Last but not least, Bill Lally. Bill is a new timer, so you gentlemen make him welcome. He is from Mode Green. How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So let's kick this off here. We got a new. Every once in a while, I will search around for different and new places to find stories. And I found one this week from a place called Spiceworks. And if you're not familiar with Spiceworks is actually a community of IT folks. Tony's probably either heard of it or been on Spiceworks before. It's a great resource. It really is, especially as more and more of us need to learn about IT and get involved in it. And so Spiceworks is a community. They have a bunch of stories. So the story we've got this week is from Spiceworks, talking about Microsoft and Google Chrome doing some patching. Microsoft's patch is the NSA Windows exploit. Google Chrome is going after a phishing exploit. What happened was, though, and this is from the article, Microsoft confirmed it has patched most of the Windows exploits that were leaked by the shadow brokers, with the only vulnerabilities remaining affecting Windows that are not any longer supported. Google Chrome's is just days away from patching a flaw in the way that browsers interpret Unicode that is a commonly exploited technique in phishing attacks. The method uses XN prefix to establish that domain originates from a country with a non-Roman alphabet. So in other words, non-English language websites. This leads me to a topic that we've actually talked about before for over a year now, and that's security and security patches and security rollouts. George, first question to you. When will we get security patches? And understand what I'm saying here. Security patches, not firmware updates, but security patches in the AV industry.
When we are utilizing a more open operating system. I mean, you're really dealing with a lot of stuff. Most of the manufacturers not using some kind of open kernel operating system, right? They're using a firmware. It's an operating system. The rest of these guys and Tony can tell more about it than I can, but it's a different factor of updating. It's not this global software piece. It's an embedded piece of operating system. And I think that's a little bit more difficult to roll out.
Well, and one of the things I'd say on that, because I am very much an open source advocate, and that we could do a whole show on that alone. But there's also the lack of transparency in anything that's proprietary. So we've talked for years about the idea in open source that millions of eyes are looking at that code instead of a handful of engineers at a company that have no interest necessarily in making secure code. They have an interest in making money. And without getting too political, when that's their primary motivation rather than their user security, we end up in a scenario like we're in now.
Okay, but I come back to this time and again in my argument for this. We mentioned two software companies, and we can argue about what Google really is and what Alphabet really is anymore. But they make software, right? Chrome is a piece of software. It's a browser. It takes the internet and serves it up to you in a visual form. So there's software going on. Two software companies who want to make money, to Tony's point, but they're also fixing patches. And so that's, I guess, Tony, I want to go back to you on that real quickly. There seems to be, at least in the IT world, that marriage has happened, right? They still want to make money, but they're still patching the fixes that are happening.
Yes, well, of course. I mean, in this case, they got caught. They got caught through no fault of their own. But in the Microsoft case, we have a massive dump by WikiLeaks that shows that the NSA has exploits. And there are people who've gone even deeper into this story rather than the Spiceworks link that we're using here, that have shown that it looks like Microsoft has been aware of these aware of these vulnerabilities for some time and potentially was complicit in it. So have they patched the code? Yeah, but it was not until the barn door was open. Okay. So motives do matter. And I think that it's healthy to be skeptical at this point.
All right. Brady, from a overarching, Brady's a manufacturer that InFocus manufactures products. A lot of those products, not only some of them have Microsoft, operating systems on there, but you guys also make other software as well. So from a manufacturer standpoint, how do you convey the security and the ongoing security of your products?
Well, look, we rely on standards everywhere possible. So we do have Windows running on all of our conferencing systems. So to the extent that Microsoft is good at patching Windows, hey, then we adopt those patches immediately. We also embrace standards for the calling. So we're using H.264 and SIP. So to the extent the community makes sure that those standards are updated to track to security concerns, then we're able to adopt those immediately as those change. And then elsewhere in our products, we're always looking for other ways to improve security. In our Canvas product, for instance, which is a collaborative visualization tool, we're using H.264, but we also traverse not just the company's internal network, but there are also mobile users who are accessing information through Canvas on their laptops, their tablets, and their smartphones. And there we encrypt, right? The minute it leaves the company network and goes out over the public mobile network, we encrypt both ways, to and from the remote device. So we work hard at that. Our customers we have a lot of customers in the military, major corporate enterprise. In general, we trust them to be good about managing their own security inside their network, right? Mm-hmm. Who am I to tell Exxon or Boeing, or the FBI how to run their internal network security? So we try to get out of the way and observe their protocols inside their network. But the minute it leaves and goes into the public space, we then add some encryption for those communications.
And that's when you take care of it, and that's when you guys are concerned with it.
Right.
Once it leaves.
And the other thing we do with our systems is, one of the things you have to do is manage user authentication. Rather than institute our own system and impose it on top of a customer's own security, we simply observe Windows single sign-on. So if they're satisfied with the security they've provided their users around access to email, for instance, or other important network elements in their own network, we simply follow that. If you can log into your email, you can log into our system.
Okay, that makes sense. Bill, from your guys' standpoint, how do you guys, again, convey to your clients and the folks putting systems, your products into their systems, the security of your products?
Sure. I think from our side, we're seeing that there's almost the middle class of products is disappearing, where you're going to have enterprise level AV, and whether it's audio, video, whatever the case is, everything is going network based. So you're building large networks for distribution, and the devices and manufacturers that are going to support those types of security protocols are going to be the better ones and the ones chosen at the enterprise level. They're going to offer Active Directory. I mean, if you think of the conversions of pieces that we're doing with room scheduling, with streaming networks, with whatever the case may be, those clients that are dealing with the types of integrations I think we all are not going to go for some middle of the road junk, basically, that's not going to support and be allowed on their networks. So what's forcing us to happen is to really get hit beyond the AV side to understand how to properly manage all the network aspects of those pieces, not only to design the network and bandwidth correctly so that we're not swamping their networks, but also from a security standpoint to make sure that we're choosing products and integrating products that support the protocols that are in line with their standards as a corporate organization.
Well, actually, that segues very nicely into our next story, the protocols.
You're welcome.
You planned that. Thank you. I appreciate that, Bill. This comes to us from our friends over at Commercial Integrator, commercialintegrator.com. AV over IP. ZV is getting on the SDVOE Alliance bandwagon. We've talked about them before. We've had Justin on a couple of times from SDVOE. And it's interesting to me. This is from the article here. Despite ZV and SDVOE's focusing on addressing networking demands, to Bill's point, gentleman from ZV, Michaels, will be the first to tell you that many in the industries are still tentative. He recently discussed the integration industry's cautious embrace of AV over IP and ZV's role as a solution provider. Tony, I want to start with you on this, but mainly because of all of us, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, that Tony's probably had the most hand in deploying and managing a lot of these networks.
Networks, yes, but quick caveat: we're just now, because I'm strictly residential, into the AV over IP, and it's fascinating.
But these guys are doing 10 gig, right? Understand it. So SDVOE is promoting a 10 gig solution. Yep. How viable is? I mean, I'm serious. A serious question here. From whether it's residential or even commercial, is that a viable solution today and even in 6 months?
I think it is, but I think that there's a couple of things that need to be considered, and this is where I come out and sound like a jerk. So I'll speak primarily for my end of the industry, which is residential, and I would say very, very few integrators in this space are ready to support such a network. I see that all the time, constantly, over and over. Undereducated, inexperienced, and more importantly, unwilling to do the work to learn. So I wrote about this for you guys, about a year ago, about the fact that 6 months ago, about the fact that folks just are not putting in the time to learn, and so they're leaning on vendors to coddle their way through these jobs. So that's going to be part of the problem on the resi side. The other thing that I think is interesting is that we are also seeing solutions that don't necessarily rely on 10 gig. So, Crestron's NVX solution is promoted as a 1 gigabit backplane. The backplane has to support the ports that you're going to use. So there's some simple arithmetic that's needed, and it'll be fascinating to see if people can actually pull out their abacus and actually get the work done. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I personally, we are starting to deploy it up to and including NVX. And I think that it's going to be a really interesting year ahead of us, because I think there will be some learning curve involved. But I'm a big fan. I like the idea. And if it goes 10 gig, I'm ready to support that as well. The infrastructure's there, the switching's there, the cost is coming down drastically. So it's doable.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that the biggest battle this year is going to be the 1 gig folks versus the 10 gig folks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was a big focus of, I was at Crestron Masters training a couple of weeks ago, and they did a huge NVX presentation. That was a big part of it, is why they chose 1 gig versus 10 gig. And the flexibility, I'm not sure, Anthony, if you saw this, the whole scale.
I didn't get myself
together. But they're showing more dedicated or more potential endpoints on a 1 gig network than a 10 gig network, because of the fact that if you're running 10 gig, you're running 10 gig. Every single device is running 10 gig. So you're actually creating more choke points than you were if you're doing a distributed 1 gig network. You might have a 10 gig backplane, or you might have a 10 gig cross connect between systems. But from endpoint to endpoint, they're only running a gig intentionally because they're running, I think it was 1,280 endpoints as opposed to, I think it was 40 or something like that. So tremendous more flexibility over 1 gig versus 10. So it'll be interesting. I agree on what the battles are going to be and how that problem gets solved, because it's not a matter of hardware restriction or cable restriction or even use at this point. It's simply managing bandwidth in the proper environment.
And compression. I think, that's the other thing, is to look at how people are implementing compression. What do these codecs look like?
Right.
And what does the end product look like? Because let's be honest, a fully compressed signal, if you're taking 4K, let's say, because that's what a lot of these folks are starting with, and you compress it down to a 1 gig signal, yes, you're going to lose some stuff. It depends on what you're showing. If you're showing full motion video, you're not going to lose as much as if you're showing a spreadsheet, let's say. And it just depends on your use case.
Which opens the opportunity, by the way. The compressed solutions are great. We have a lot of them at InFocus, but we also have an uncompressed solution. So PixelNet, which is not a new product, it's been out there for 8 years, transmits video and audio as an uncompressed signal. And what our customers do with that product actually is run it on a parallel network. Because let's face it, Cat6 is cheap, right? By the foot, switching infrastructure is cheap. And so what we have some customers do who really don't want to use compressed video, that is, the things they're monitoring or watching are so critical that they can't afford to lose anything to compression, is they simply create a parallel network, right? It's easy to string Cat6 around the building, put in a parallel set of IP switches, and just run a separate Ethernet network. And so we see customers sort of being very clever about which way to go. What are they looking at? How mission critical is it? What does the quality of video have to be? And then making decisions about, do I go on compressed solution or compressed solution?
All right, Mr. Tucker, you'll have the last word on this. What do you say about the whole either 1 gig, 10 gig, or is it even time to do video over the network?
Well, it's funny. The first thought I had, and all the guests have actually echoed this, is the article talks about two main other points. One is, I'm going to quote it here, is how will the industry solve its video problem? Quote, it will throw bandwidth at it. And then they go on to talk about how do we make a profit on this and how does the industry survive? And the first thing that popped into my brain is that this article is really based on the idea that they believe there's a cosmological constant in the AV industry, even with video over IP, right? And by that, I mean, is it going to keep expanding, right? The point was made, 10 gig, it clutters up because 10 gig's firing away at 10 gig all the time. It's a V8 engine, all cylinders going all the time. Well, you're going to burn a lot of gas and you're not going to get very far usually. You'll get halfway there very fast, but you're not going to get very far after a while. Where is that cosmological constant stop? Where do we have it where you can actually do all this stuff and make a profit and not destroy an industry? I'm not saying they're wrong for putting the product out. What I am saying is that it's really a hard sell to say, I'm going to get rid of the matrix switcher, as the article says.
Yeah.
That takes a whole point of labor and profit and wire out of the mix, which is great. If you want to be about the ecology and about being green, those things also work. But we are at a point, as Tony said, you have to learn how to be that IT guy, how to be that IP person, and that's where your value add comes in. Otherwise, what's going to happen?
And you're assuming the IT guy actually wants you on his network.
Yeah. But let me throw two things out here, and you guys can give me crickets or you can jump on this. I actually will answer Joyce's question. Yes, it's going to keep expanding, but I'm not saying that the bandwidth is going to keep expanding, but it is eventually, obviously. I shouldn't say obviously. The bandwidth will keep expanding. It's kind of the nature of technology. But we're already seeing 8K displays and 8K projectors before 4K content really is even to the forefront, right? Yeah. So the resolution is going to keep expanding. I've talked with some folks that are already doing 16K for crying out loud.
But here's my point. As a cosmological constant, you presume that there's an infinite amount of space to be able to take up. Yes, resolutions could get higher. Yes, our networks could get bigger. But which ones? Look at the U.S. The U.S. is still having trouble with its transportation and its electrical grids because we never had to rebuild it after a Great War. We never had to put in modern systems. It's a patchwork of things that causes more problems than it solves. And we're getting to that point in this industry.
You bring up something that we haven't talked about yet, but with these video solutions, it's one thing to talk about local stuff and sending local sources to local displays. But I think particularly in the commercial end of things, there's going to be a need to start sending these higher resolutions and seeing more bandwidth hungry applications that are going, passing over the WAN as opposed to the LAN. And here in America, we sure as hell aren't ready for it. We're as backwards as it comes, and we may as well be in Sudan. So,
well, and not for nothing, but they're also
and actually puts that kind of infrastructure, or the ability to pass massive amounts of bandwidth reliably with low latency. It'll be interesting to see where video over IP goes there.
Yeah, and real quickly before we get off this, there's also, to Tony's point, there's also sections of the country that are still on dial-up, and I'm not making that up, and I'm not joking. There are still parts of the U.S. that still don't have broadband. So until we fix that, I'm with Tony on this. We've got to fix some other infrastructure problems.
Broadband, they don't even have ISDN.
No, well, true, and we're so bad ISDN, it's a joke for some of us now. All right, let's get the last story here. This comes to us from our friends over at AV Technology. They're calling it a battle royale, and I find it interesting that they are, even though I feel like this fight has happened before. Projectors versus electronic whiteboards, quote unquote. It's shaping up as a technological battle royale, but the fight between electronic whiteboards and projectors could determine how a generation of college students are taught. Think of the conflict as a cage match in 5 rounds where their positives and negatives are pitted against each other. Guess where I'm going to start here? Brady?
I'm guessing me.
Let's get ready to rumble. Please don't do that. I got sued once when I used his voice, and it's an old radio story. I really did.
I've never had the opportunity to quote Chairman Mao, but I'm going to do it right here.
Okay.
Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Look, this seems like a silly doctrinaire fight to me. People know generally what they need once they're apprised of what their options are. And, some classrooms really like projectors. Although I will say they come to grips with a reality around lamp replacement. I was talking to one school district in Texas last month that told me they spent $95,000 a year on lamp replacement.
Holy cow.
Astonishing.
Wow. 12 schools.
Yeah. By the way, they weren't our projectors or lamps. They were looking at our whiteboards for that very reason. They were somebody else's projectors and lamps. But, look, I think it really comes down to things like budget and, teaching style and preference. They do different things. Projectors are fantastic for presentation. The good ones permit casting, so students can come in with their tablets and their phones and their Chromebooks and project up onto the screen for the class those things they've created independently. Whiteboards give you another layer of interactivity. They can do those things, plus the ability to go out onto the web, right? Pop open a browser easily that's embedded into the product. Yeah, you can do that with a laptop and a projector, but it's simpler. And then there's something special about that tactile sensation, right? And having watched lots of K through 12 classrooms and even university classrooms, there's something about an engagement with content when I can touch the content, and watching people sort of approach a screen and realize they can draw on top of live video or an image or just whiteboard an idea with somebody across the planet is a magical thing. And so again, I think it comes down to the topic. It comes down to the teaching style, maybe the level of education being provided, and people will pick the product that's right. I see this. I think it is a cage death match, but I think it's as staged as anything the WWF puts on.
All right, I like that. That'll work. Mr. Tucker, here you've been in different parts of the arena here. I'll keep with that theme. Where do you see this going down?
I'm going to take a real practical approach to this one because I firmly believe in it. What do you need to solve? Yes. And that's really what it comes down to. I love whiteboards. I love that interactive thing. I love the storage. I love the access later. the interactive projection is really great, but what space are you filling and whom do you need to reach? And that really what comes down to it. There's going to be those things everywhere. Do you need an emissive or do you need a reflective technology? Do you need something of that nature to communicate the ideas to the room at large? Is it an arena? Is it, a lecture hall? Is it a tiny classroom? Is it a huddle room? I mean, all those things really do matter. And it's just like the old joke we used to make is sometimes an overhead projector is what you need. And that's what you're going to go with. Laugh as we may, or think it's not as interactive and engaging, but it is, as long as it's filling the need and the message.
All right. Bill, what you go ahead.
I agree. I'll echo what these guys are saying. It's so much application based. It's environment based. It's light based. It's, I think the client's going to know what the client needs. And there's just so many options of what you can have on both sides of the spectrum. It really is a matter of, that's our job as integrators, it's to figure out what the proper solution is for them and provide that for them. And they may know and they may not know, but they are hiring us to guide them and help them. They don't care. I mean, at the end, they're not technologists. We're there to solve their problems. We're there to facilitate what they do for a living and how they make their money. So how do we pick the proper product, or education-wise, whatever the case may be, to help them do their job more effectively? And that's our job.
All right. Mr. Zotti, last word here, sir.
Well, it may just be because I'm calling in from Boulder, Colorado, but I'm going to go ahead and Neil Gorsuch you here. As a residential guy, I've got nothing to say, so I'm just going to refuse to answer.
All right, that'll work.
It just doesn't play in my field. So I'll
How many whiteboards have you put in houses?
Actually, the honest to goodness truth is I've done service for one whiteboard in my entire career, and I called it the Turduckened. I wish I could remember the vendor, but it was basically a giant Android tablet where they Turduckened a Windows PC in, and you could open the Windows PC as another window. It was a bizarre thing, and I like to think I'm relatively clever, but I'll bet I spent half an hour just looking at this thing, trying to figure out what in the was happening. It was a bizarre piece, and that's my only experience.
And for anybody that knows Anthony Zotti, you'll know that he just censored himself, and I appreciate that.
Filter is on.
A rare thing. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us. Mr. George Tucker, how do people find you? If it's social media, it's at Tucker2s. I write for various trade publications here and there, as well as produce for this lovely station, AVNation.
Yes, he does. Mr. Brady Bruce, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you and or InFocus?
It's easy. You can go to infocus.com, and there are links to our various social media channels there.
All right. Mr. Anthony Zotti, I appreciate it, dude. It was a good time seeing you, and I haven't seen you in a while, so I appreciate it.
Great.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to?
If you're not the faint of heart, you can find me online as @TonyNoOne. Where I don't filter myself.
No, and it's fabulous. Trust me. Also, thank you, Mr. Bill Lally. I appreciate it for coming on. How do people find you?
Email's the best way, bill@modegreen.com.
All right, bill@modegreen.com. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me unless you want to see where I go from time to time. I just came back from the East Coast with Semco and just spent a couple days out there with some of their road shows. And in 2 weeks, I will be in Chicago, where I will be in the home of my beloved Bears with AVI Systems at Soldier Field. Just want to put it out there. Now, my son, who is 9 years old, who can still throw a better spiral than the former quarterback of the Bears, will also be there. So, anyhow, on that note, let's go by the website. You know what? It was a rough 8 years. Just put it that way. Go by the website if you would, please. Brand spanking new, if you haven't noticed. AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. The team did an awful lot of work. Notice I said the team and not me, because I didn't do anything but answer questions. Awful lot of good work there. I will tell you that we've had a couple issues with our RSS feed. So if you would, if you're having issues with it, shoot me an email, tim@avnation.tv. Also, check out our underwriter page. These are the folks that help us do what we do, and we appreciate you supporting them. And our Infocom 2017 page is up and live. We've got some stuff going on, including our annual AVNation AV Tweets tweet up, which happens Wednesday of that week from 4 to 6. But all of that is at the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been AV Week.